Views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Yeah! When music sounded so good like this, fabulous. Time to show. It's your time, you're nominated as the greatest, and you're flowing and blow minds. Radio done rated, some outdated. The friends you know, you won't.
Good day, and welcome to the Washington Report with Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. I'm Stacey Plaskett, and I am blessed to serve as the Virgin Islands delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. The Washington Report was created to keep Virgin Islanders informed of current federal issues that directly affect our community. The show's guests range from political leaders to community activists. This show is all about getting information for you, to you. Therefore, I encourage you to email your questions, ideas, thoughts for the show to askstacy@mail.house.gov to have them addressed on future shows. So this show, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every single one of us in some way over the past year, more than a year now. We've struggled together as a nation and a community, and now we must work together to end this dark period in our world. We have a clear path forward to come out of this dark time, and every American, every one of us has a responsibility to play our part. A major part of that responsibility, based upon medical experts, not me, but the experts, is to get vaccinated. I want to take a moment to directly address those who may be hesitant to receive a vaccine here in the Virgin Islands. According to the CDC, we are currently at level 4 in the Virgin Islands, which is the highest level of COVID risk of infection. And although the number of cases has been dropping and the vaccination rate rising, the experts agree that it is critical that we do all that we can to get herd immunity. As of August 18th, approximately 40,000 individuals have been vaccinated in the Virgin Islands, which is about 37.7% of our population, one of the lowest vaccination rates in the nation. The estimate for COVID-19 is that roughly 70 to 85% of the population will need to be vaccinated to reach what is called herd immunity threshold. Thanks to the incredible work of scientists around the globe, building on decades of research on virology and vaccine technology, Americans have access to 3 excellent life-saving vaccines against COVID-19. They are all safe and available to all individuals 12 years and older. Now, my expertise is in the law, and I've been a lawyer for over 25 years. I have an expertise in criminal law, transactional law, administrative and legislation. I know very little about environmental or tax law, and I would never advise people on EPA rules or tax planning because that's not my expertise. In the same way related to COVID and vaccines, it's important to get your information from experts. And so I decided I wanted to spend a significant amount of time on my show to having medical and scientific experts on the show, experts from the highest level of their field, experts who are concerned with people of color, to communities like ourselves. And so I have 3 of those experts on my show, 2 of whom also happen to be Virgin Islanders. Now, I'd like to introduce my special guest today as we discuss an incredibly important topic, the COVID-19 vaccine, and why they believe it is important for us to receive it. First, Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith is the Associate Dean for Health Equity Research, CNIH Long Professor of Medicine, Public Health and Management, and Director of Equity Research and Innovation at Yale University. Her research focuses on health and healthcare equity for marginalized populations with an emphasis on the social and structural determinants of health, the influence of healthcare systems on health disparities, and the advancement of community academics partnered scholarship. Dr. Nunez-Smith currently serves as Senior Advisor to the White House COVID-19 Response Team and is Chair of the Presidential COVID-19 Health Equity Task Force. Originally from the Virgin Islands, she attended Jefferson Medical College, residency at Harvard's Brigham and Women's Hospital, a fellowship at Yale Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Clinical Scholars Program. Dr. Aisha Langford is a behavioral scientist who studies health communication and medical decision-making across diseases and contexts. She received her BA in English from the University of Virginia, her MPH in behavioral science from St. Louis University, and her PhD in health behavior and health education from the University of Michigan. As an assistant professor at NYU's Grossman School of Medicine, Department of Population Health, she studies how health communication can improve individual decision-making and reduce population health disparities for conditions or behaviors that lead to preventable mortality and morbidity. Dr. Alric V. Simmons, Jr. is a board-certified general surgeon in Orlando, Florida. Dr. Simmons received his undergraduate degree from Morehouse College. He earned his medical degree from the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Public Health in 1999. He went on to complete his medical residency at Howard University Hospital in Washington, D.C. Dr. Simmons specializes in breast cancer surgery, endocrine surgery, thyroid, parathyroid, and hernia repair surgery. Dr. Simmons serves as a medical director of the Sherman Outpatient Surgery Center and is chairman of the Florida Hospital System Operating Room Governance Committee, as well as a member of the board of directors of Florida Hospital Credit Union. And he was born on the island of St. Croix. So let's jump right into the topic at hand with the following commonly asked questions and concerns. But first, I'd really like to hear from Dr. Smith to share what the Biden administration is doing related to the COVID pandemic response, particularly, Dr. Smith, as you head up the Equity Task Force. Why are the issues of equity important in dealing with the pandemic? A lot of people of color have distrust of the federal government, which has led to African Americans not trusting the vaccine and having one of the lowest vaccination rates in the nation. Why are your arguments to justify, and what are your arguments to justify, why your fellow Virgin Islanders should trust the government in their effort to have everyone vaccinated?
Well, thank you so much, Congressman. It's great to be with you today. Very, very grateful for you spending the time creating this platform and opportunity for this really critical discussion. I mean, you made so many outstanding, important points. We are at a pivotal point in terms of the pandemic. Here we are 18 months into this. Really, really some good news to lift up. You know, we have vaccines that are effective. The vaccines are working to keep us out of the hospital, to keep us alive. Really, really critical. They're free, they're easy to get, they're convenient. You know, the Biden-Harris administration is focused on making sure everybody has all the information about the logistics, but also about safety and efficacy for the vaccines. But why the urgency now for people to get vaccinated? You know, we're dealing with a variant that is unlike any other variants we've seen before, and Delta is different. We're seeing Delta at just very high rates of transmission and contagion. It's spreading, you know, furiously. We're worried about the ability of our healthcare systems to keep up. You know, we talk about the reasons to get vaccinated in different categories. Certainly, as you said, it's important for us to protect ourselves, and we know the vaccines will do that. It's important for us to protect our families, our communities. You know, who among us doesn't know somebody who was infected with COVID is dealing with lingering symptoms? We refer to that as long COVID. Avoiding long COVID, so important, right? And then respecting our healthcare workers. I'm a practicing internal medicine physician, people have been through a lot who are there showing up every day to care for us and our loved ones. One of the ways that we show gratitude to those heroes is to do our part, to get vaccinated and to make sure that the beds are available for other people who might need them because of an accident or something else. We definitely in the administration always want to meet people where they are, make sure your questions are asked and answered. We recognize the many reasons why people might have questions, might be wondering about intentions and other things. So you have to get information from sources that you trust, but also that are expert, right? Those doctors, those in healthcare, those scientists, other trusted leaders who are invested in you. And really, really a grain of salt, so much on social media, the misinformation and the disinformation that's out there. But it's not too late. Everybody in the country, 12 and older, eligible for vaccines. The supply is certainly there. I bring a message to encourage you. Please, please, we need you. You have not done everything that you are meant to do yet. Get vaccinated and stay with us.
Thank you. Let me say, Dr. Nunez-Smith, I trust you. You are a woman, you're a woman of color, you are an expert in your field, and you're a Virgin Islander. But many of us in our community do not trust the government. We do not believe that the government has the interest of Black people in mind. I think about people always giving me the Tuskegee experiment as an example, right? I tell them as someone who looks at logic, that's not a logical example, because the Tuskegee experiment were a group of people corralling men who already had syphilis and studying the effects of not giving them treatment. That's not what's happening with COVID, right? If you followed that logic, what would make it a better experiment is if they got Black people who had COVID, put them in a facility and didn't give them any treatment, and watched and studied the effects of the COVID pandemic on them. That would be a logical correlation between the Tuskegee experiment and what's happening now with the COVID vaccine. Yes. But why should we trust the government in this instance when the government has failed Black people in the past? What are you doing to ensure that our interests are being looked after and that we are safe through your perch heading up equity at the President's task force?
You're absolutely right. In terms of the U.S. Public Health Service study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male at Tuskegee, right? And that was absolutely about a withholding of care. Now, President Biden has come out and said that most certainly the federal government has not always, and that's one example, treated communities of color, particularly Black people, with the respect that they deserve, right? And the history and legacy of medical experimentation is one. There's a contemporary reality, too, of people experiencing bias and discrimination across multiple sectors of society, including when seeking health care. And so as a practicing physician, somebody part of the administration, I'm acutely aware of the issues of trustworthiness or lack thereof by many healthcare institutions, and certainly in some instances by the government. That's why, the number one point in the 7-point national strategy for COVID-19 is rebuilding trust with everyone in the country. I'm really grateful that you brought up Tuskegee because people may not be aware, but the descendants of those men who were part of the Tuskegee study have come out publicly to say, please get vaccinated. Right. Wow. One of the things that we do, the redress that's important, is for us not to deny ourselves the benefit of scientific discovery. Right. This is what we need to do, is go out there and take advantage. We are fortunate to be in this country. And one of the ways that we reify the structural racism and its intergenerational legacy is by taking a sideline now when there are life-saving vaccines. Also, I want to make a special comment about treatments, because the most effective way to keep yourself safe from COVID-19, and the worst of it, is to get vaccinated. But if one does get infected, there are therapies out there. And I hear as well people saying no to the monoclonal antibodies and other things that are life-saving, particularly for those who are really high risk. But I say, there's a lot of work to do to rebuild trust, without doubt. That's not going to happen overnight. but we are in the midst of a crisis, and the risk of getting COVID-19 far outweigh the risk of getting vaccinated or taking advantage of any of those therapies. And that's the message I think people, really, I'm hopeful that people will hear and heed.
Well, I have one last question to you, and it's going to be the same question to Dr. Langford to see if she has anything to add to it. One of the concerns that I hear from people is that the vaccine came out too quickly, that this was developed too fast, and therefore they don't trust it because it was too quick. What do you say? What's your answer to that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and it's great to be here in this conversation panel with all these experts, because this is a full team lift in the communication. I get asked this question a lot too, right, around the vaccines. The reality is the technology which the vaccines are based, and typically this is the messenger RNA vaccine people are talking about, decades, right, under multiple administrations too. So under the Obama administration, a lot of the technology that was advanced. So it might seem new because it's kind of new to the rest of us, but it's been in development for quite some time. I think another question people often ask is kind of who was in that trial? Can I see myself in the science that developed these vaccines? And thankfully the answer is yes. Over 30% of the participants in the trials, like these are the trials that told us there's a good chance that they're going to work, and we've seen them work in the real world settings. The trials that say the safety profiles look good, 30% of folks identified as people of color. And that's really important, and to say that the scientists who helped create the vaccines, diverse, right? The policymakers who reviewed it, the independent scientists, diverse. So really important that there's been representation in the trials and in the leadership every step of the way. The technology is not new and decades in the making.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I know, Dr. Langford, when Dr. Nunez-Smith talked about the clinical trials, you have a unique perspective with regard to the clinical trials. Can you share with us your experience and any comments that you want to have about what's been discussed thus far?
Sure, absolutely. So I actually was a participant in the phase 1 clinical trial for the Pfizer vaccine. So I was literally one of 48 people treated or in the trial at NYU Langone Health. And some people have asked me, why in the world would I sign up proactively to get an experimental vaccine at the time? And
why would you do that?
Well, the first reason is that my dissertation research while I was at the University of Michigan actually was all around how to enhance representation of racial and ethnic minorities in clinical trials. And I have said for over a decade that one of the biggest reasons that people don't participate is that they don't know about it. And a lot of times, if you're a racial or ethnic minority, you're actually not invited because people think you're paranoid or that you'd be afraid. So I've been advocating for years that people have the opportunity to know about trial opportunities and to participate if it's a good choice for them. So I wanted to participate because I wanted to contribute to science, because as a public health professional, I know that vaccines are very important. I also had a very good friend who got COVID in April of 2020. He got very, very sick. He was hospitalized. Luckily, he is better, but now he has scar tissue in his lungs because of COVID and a lot of lingering issues. And I thought, I'm healthy and very blessed that I'm able to actually participate, and I wanted to contribute. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to participate. Now, my family and friends were very concerned. They thought, they said, what if you drop dead? And luckily, as you can see, I did not drop dead. I've stayed healthy. I got my vaccination actually in July of 2020 as part of the clinical trial. So I was actually vaccinated about 5 months before the vaccines were available under emergency use authorization. And I actually proactively chose to get the experimental or optional booster shot this year in March of 2021, also as part of the clinical trial. So it's really been a blessing and very interesting to see everything come full circle as a participant in the very early stage of the clinical trials, and now seeing this vaccine that is safe and effective and life-saving now available to the world. That's really a gift and a blessing. And I'm really excited that I had the opportunity to participate, and that I have these kind of opportunities to talk to people who look like me, who may be on the fence about getting vaccinated, that it's important. It's a very caring thing to do for our community and our loved ones. And it's a really wise thing to do for yourself as well. So thank you for this opportunity.
Dr. Langford, as well as Dr. Nunez-Smith. Dr. Nunez-Smith, I know you might have to leave. Could you share with us, we talked about emergency, you just used a phrase, emergency use of the vaccine. And I've heard individuals say that it's only authorized for emergency use. And I'm not going to take this until the FDA gives it permanent approval, or that it's no longer just an emergency approval of the vaccine. Can you tell us if there's an importance to that difference, and why that should not be a deterrent for individuals to take it?
Absolutely, I can get started. And let me say, Dr. Langford, thank you for participating in the clinical trials. And we don't often say thank you to everybody who steps up and does that. That is such a key, important role. And every time somebody asks me about diversity and representation in the trials, and we can say, yes, there was, we look to you and say thank you for that. You importantly raised this emergency use authorization question, another one that we commonly get, and people wonder, does that make it experimental? And so it's really, I think, key that we discuss this. The process for any therapeutic, including vaccines, will be to go through first the FDA process. I want to be sure people know this is not a political process. These are independent scientists and advisors who review the data. Those data are publicly available. Once they review, the next step is for the CDC to get involved, again, an independent group, the ACIP. So emergency use authorization, there are several components, right? We talked about safety, we talked about efficacy. There's also quality, making sure that the vaccines can be made in a high standard quality way. And emergency use is a process to expedite just in this situation, to say, we are going to start reviewing these data in real time, understanding different processes working in parallel. One of the things I want to say, which is perhaps a bit ironic, is we, now that there are hundreds of millions of doses given of these vaccines, we have more data now regarding safety, efficacy, effectiveness, that's the real world scenario for it working, and quality than we have for most things that have full approval. And so, at this point in the pandemic, when we talk about emergency use, I think it's important for people to understand that, and to also understand the FDA is working very aggressively, but not skipping any steps, and no steps were skipped to get to EUA status. But to get to that full approval, there is a fair amount of data that says some people are waiting for that. But I want to encourage people, because Delta is here, that the urgency is now. Every day does really matter. The FDA does not put out anything for emergency use authorization that they do not have a high degree of confidence in for safety, effectiveness, or efficacy and quality. I've been vaccinated, of course. Vaccinating my children who are eligible. Want to make sure everybody 12 and older goes out and does that.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. I think it was fascinating when you said that, the number of people that we have that have taken this vaccine are more individuals than we normally have for regular FDA approval on others. Something that you mentioned were children. I've not shared this with a lot of people, but, I have children myself. Both my husband and I are vaccinated, and our youngest child is 12 years old and turned 12 in June. And when we asked her what she wanted for her birthday, she said she wanted to be vaccinated, that she wanted to get back to life. We have older children who are vaccinated. And so, of course, we talked with her pediatrician. We talked with healthcare experts, and, several days after her birthday, we made a big deal about taking her to get her vaccine, because that's important to me as a parent, to make sure that my daughter can move on with her life, that I am going to, I'm going to make judgments that I believe are based in science and based in the expertise of individuals who have medical expertise, not from Facebook posts, not from people who are not under peer review when they put their opinions, send me WhatsApp, I'm going to do it based on the experts. And pediatricians, CDC, the experts say that this is something that is safe for children that are 12 and over. My importance as a parent is to make sure that my daughter is healthy now, and I believe that we've made the best decisions. But Dr. Simmons, not to be outdone in this, we've talked to Dr. Nunez-Smith, the St. Thomian, and so now, of course, I want to ask a Crucian what their opinion is. So I'm asking you, first of all, you're a medical director at a Florida hospital, which is a hot spot. What are you seeing in the hospital? And based on that, what decisions have you made for your own family? And then explain what herd immunity is and why it's so important.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I will say that your daughter has demonstrated quite brilliant genes that she has inherited very, very well and made wise decisions. So I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Medical Officer at the Advent Health Celebration Campus, which is right in the heart of a war zone at this point in time. Just to give you some real live numbers, as I sit here today in my office, 49% of our 309 beds are occupied by COVID patients. We have a 40-bed ICU, and it is absolutely full. 29 of those 40 beds are filled with intubated COVID patients, and we have 3 intubated patients that are in non-traditional ICU spaces. We are currently holding 12 patients in our emergency department who need to be admitted to the hospital, but we have no room. And so we are definitely in the throes of a fight, and we've been in this fight for over a year. And yet our teams are squared away, and they come to work every day to serve our patients, many of which, 98% of which, are unvaccinated. And so the catastrophe here is that this really and truly has become about the management of a preventable disease. And I can't tell you the number of patients who, if they are lucky enough to survive being intubated, wake up and say publicly, I wish I would have been vaccinated. There's no degree of soursop tea, no amount of balsam, no lemongrass that will bring you back from this COVID. It is real. And the reality of it is that there's a vaccine that can prevent you from being intubated. We have the good fortune of coming down after Hurricane Irma Maria with a team of 10 and being based right there in the Virgin Islands, taking care of about 400 or 500 patients. I know the medical infrastructure that is in the Virgin Islands. And I'm telling you that most who would come to the state of Florida to receive care, the same problem that we are seeing here in Central Florida is also taking place in South Florida. And across the entire state, there is no place that has bed capacity or ICU capacity to take care of patients. To your other question,
I'm sorry, go on. No, go on, sir, sorry.
Yeah. To your other question in terms of herd immunity, it literally is a threshold by which we have enough protection in the community such that the virus does not spread. And the problem is that when we don't reach herd immunity, we have the opportunity in the unvaccinated for the virus to mutate. This is the natural course of viruses. This is part of how they gain their being. They cannot reproduce without a host. They need to infect people. And when you are vaccinated and you have protection, you still can get COVID. It's just that the symptoms are not as severe. So, what we are seeing now is largely preventable. And it's unfortunate that people are really being steadfast in their decision-making and being misinformed from all sorts of manners of social media and finding themselves in death's way.
But when you say that, I mean, you talked about 98% of those who are in ICU with the COVID are the unvaccinated. But, that means that 2% are vaccinated. And I've heard the argument that says that because people are vaccinated can still contract COVID, what's the point of getting vaccinated? Can you explain what's the point then? Does that go back to herd immunity, and what does that mean?
So what that means is that even if you are vaccinated, you can still be an asymptomatic carrier of COVID, particularly the Delta variant. But when you look at the patients who are sick enough, even if they are vaccinated, sick enough to require hospitalization, much less intensive care treatment, it is significantly lower. Significantly lower. So most of the folks who we see in our hospital today are not vaccinated. The vaccinated folks will get COVID and have aches and pains for a day or two and start feeling better, and hopefully will quarantine as suggested by the CDC, but have no real threat to life or limb. It is those who are unvaccinated, and by the way, it is much younger people who are unvaccinated that we're seeing have these problems. Today alone, we've had codes in our intensive care unit, and the teams are tired. I spoke earlier today with some of our team members, and they were saying never in their career have they put so many people in body bags. And yet they've got to get squared away, deal with that emotional, moral injury of informing another family, watching them scream and moan and wail about the loss of a loved one, and then get ready, prepare that body for the morgue, clean the room, sterilize it, and get ready to admit another patient who's waiting in the ER to be admitted. And we've been living this cycle for a full year now, and people are tired. But we're dedicated, and we have to be squared away in our minds and stay in place to continue to serve our communities.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Langford, I don't know if you've heard of this, but Dr. Simmons, this goes to you first. You know, as a Virgin Islander, I know your mom, I know my parents. You talked about lemongrass, natural remedies, you know, people juicing up something for you. And I've heard the argument, I have a good immune system. I work on my immune system, and this is not going to affect me because I have a juice for the COVID that's going to keep it away. What do you say medically for that? Because there is a use in medicine of herbs and medicinal, you know, herbs to support suppression of disease. And, you know, I know you as scientists use those in some of the medicines that you create. What is your answer to people who talk about that related to the COVID-19 virus?
So I would say there certainly is a role in most things for immune modulation or immune boosting nutrients, micronutrients, supplements, if you will. And certainly in our traditions, that is a mainstay. However, coronavirus is a novel virus. The Earth has never seen this before, 2019. And it is so severe, the way that it affects the body, the way that it binds to the receptors of the lung, the way that it takes over lung function and paralyzes it and causes an intense inflammatory response within the lung that scars the lung such that patients can't breathe. The death of COVID is an air starvation, and there is no amount of nutrient that can protect that. And so I would just encourage folk to not be the beta test themselves to see whether or not what they have juiced for will protect them. I am seeing too many people die who are young, who are healthy, who have that same mentality that I work out, I exercise, I eat well. If I get it, I'll be fine. This Delta variant is proving that to be false. And I think in the Virgin Islands, it will prove that to be false as well. And of particular note, you know, so many Virgin Islanders have high blood pressure and sugar diabetes. They have comorbid conditions. And if they get COVID, God be with them.
Thank you. Dr. Langford, I saw you shaking, nodding your head yes.
Yes, I would say 1,000% agree with Dr. Simmons. I would say that we should be talking about this as both and not either or. So everything that was important before COVID is still important. It's really good to manage your weight. It's good to get exercise. It's good to eat your fruits and vegetables. It's good to drink water. It's good to go outside and get fresh air and sunshine. It is good to get proper sleep. All of those things are important steps to keep you well and healthy, regardless of the pandemic. But vaccines are also here to help you stay healthy and to prevent disease. So they're not either or. You should be doing both of them. I say this all the time. My really good friend who got sick from COVID, luckily he recovered, but he still has scar tissue in his lungs. He is young. He is healthy or was healthy, very, very young and healthy. But COVID the virus doesn't say, oh, you take a particular T and you don't. It is an equal opportunity infector. So we need to use all the tools that we can to help prevent this disease. And that includes getting vaccinated and also doing all these other things that are really, really important for managing health all the time. And if the doctor mentioned, if people have chronic health conditions, it's also really important to keep your blood pressure under control. And if you are taking medication for diabetes or other things, that you're working with your healthcare team and talking to your healthcare providers and following that plan of action so you can stay as healthy as possible, because COVID is a terrible disease to get, and we have a tool that will help us not get infected. And I really hope that we all take that opportunity to stay well and to keep our families and communities well at the same time.
Okay. So now I'm going to go through some quickly. They're telling me, they give me some signal that I don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to go through some of the myths and ask you guys if you can succinctly give me a response to them. Will the COVID-19 vaccine alter my DNA?
No.
Unequivocally, no.
And why not?
It's a complicated explanation, but basically the way the mRNA vaccines are made, which are Pfizer and Moderna and also Johnson & Johnson, it's actually impossible for those vaccines to actually alter your DNA just because of the way that they're made.
Okay. Can receiving a COVID-19 vaccine cause you to be magnetic? I'm not sure what that means, but that's something that people are out there saying.
Yeah, I think that arises from some videos that have been socialized on social media. And again, I have seen nothing at all that bears that to be any truth whatsoever.
Does the COVID-19 vaccine cause erectile dysfunction or infertility? Oh, Dr. Simmons, you smiled at the erectile dysfunction one, huh?
You know, I think that's a wonderful marketing ploy. Perhaps if we told men that they could breathe longer and perform better and not be intubated, they may be more apt to take it. But absolutely, it does not cause erectile dysfunction.
Right.
I mean, I think I had a discussion with one of my older sons telling him that, getting COVID will affect you potentially, your erectile functioning if you have COVID, because it goes into your bloodstream and then affects the oxygen related to those smaller vessels, right?
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. You began saying that you were a legal expert, but now you're showing some medical expertise as well.
I just read well.
Yes.
From peer-reviewed medical reports, not from WhatsApp videos. What about infertility? I think that's something that people are concerned about. I know people who've said they're not necessarily want their children to have it because they're afraid their children will be infertile later on.
Mm-hmm. There's actually no evidence that the vaccines impact fertility. And actually, all of the major professional organizations like the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and all of the reproductive professional societies actually are encouraging people to get vaccinated, because when you are trying to have a baby, it's really important for you to be well and healthy. But there's no evidence at all to suggest that it's going to affect your fertility or your children's fertility in any way.
I would also add to that women who are pregnant and have COVID have a higher risk of death and dying. Any woman who has been pregnant knows that the baby occupies a great amount of space in the abdomen and pushes up on the diaphragm, which doesn't allow them to breathe very, very deeply in. And so they have very, very poor pulmonary function to begin with, and COVID just makes that worse. So the data actually shows that the mortality during pregnancy for COVID is very, very high. And so not only does it not affect your fertility, but it may allow you to live and prevent you from getting COVID if you are pregnant.
What about breastfeeding mothers?
Yeah.
Has there any CDC or anyone come out about whether or not individuals who are breastfeeding should have the vaccine or not take the vaccine?
No.
I love, you guys are really being succinct now. Maybe a little too succinct with me on some of these answers. So, other thing that I've seen repeatedly out there is that vaccinated people are the ones spreading COVID. Have you heard that? And what is your response to that?
So I think that, vaccinated people can spread COVID. And asymptomatic non-vaccinated people can as well. There's a whole lot of information out there about people coming across the border spreading it, or African Americans spreading it, as I said, by some political folks. The reality of it is that the spread is protected by the same mechanisms: vaccination, masking, and social distancing. And so the personal responsibility piece is to get vaccinated. You can have still some asymptomatic transmission, however.
The booster shots. What do you all think about that? Should individuals who have been vaccinated take the booster shot? But then even more fundamentally, if people, I've heard the discussion, oh, well, see, now you need booster shots. The vaccine don't work. It ain't working if you have to get a booster shot. What do you have to say about that?
So that's not true. There are other examples of vaccines that you get boosted. So that's not a novel concept.
Like what? What other vaccine do you have to get a booster for? Because people forget.
So tetanus, I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but tetanus, now it's like escaping my mind of the other ones, but that is one that comes to mind quickly. I'm really excited that boosters are available. Right now, they are going to be prioritizing booster shots for people who are immunocompromised, cancer patients, adults for whatever reason that their immune system may not have had a robust reaction to that. So those are the people that will be prioritized first. But again, COVID disease is really terrible. And I'm glad that we have more tools to help keep protection over a longer amount of time. So I'm very actually excited that we have the opportunity to have boosters in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. In our facility, 80% of our medical staff has been vaccinated. And many are clamoring for the booster. And literally what we're having to tell them is wait the appropriate amount of time before you get it. Because the data is showing us that the immunity starts to fade to some degree after 6 months. And so at 6 months and beyond, I would certainly encourage those who are inclined to get vaccinated to get a booster shot so that you have continued protection. Because again, the variants are being produced and will continue to be produced in the unvaccinated. And to the point about what other types of viruses we get vaccinated for, we get influenza vaccinations every year. And those vaccinations are based upon the two most wicked, virulent strains of influenza from the past 2 years. We're giving the body a chance to be exposed to it so that you have a chance to fight it without succumbing to it. And so
but Dr. Simmons, I don't take the flu vaccine, so why should I have to take this one? Other people take that flu vaccine. That's old people. I don't take the flu vaccine every day. I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Yeah, I would welcome those folks to come and take a tour of my ICU with me right now and see the number of 20 and 30-year-olds that have tubes down their throat that are breathing for them, who are dying without their family being able to see them because we cannot expose those families to the virus. This is nothing to play with. And I live it every day. My teams live it every day. And I just hope people make the right choices for themselves. It's the only way out.
You were saying that, Dr. Simmons. One of my really good friends, my colleagues, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who's from Brooklyn, she represents one of the most heavily Caribbean districts in New York City. And, I'm telling her the challenges we're having, not just in the Virgin Islands, but in other Caribbean islands with people getting vaccinated. And I'm like, Vet, what's it like in your district? Because you have so many Caribbean people, are they getting vaccinated? And she was like, sis, we can't keep the vaccine. The black people there are getting vaccinated so quickly. And I was like, well, what do you think the difference is? And she was like, yo, we've seen the body bags in Brooklyn. We were the epicenter. And so we recognized this is not just about us, it's about our community and protecting other people in our community, if not yourself.
I think that's an excellent point. And unfortunately, I've said to my wife several times, I think that the turning point is going to be when we start burying babies and when folk get tired of going to funerals. Or when they can't have funerals and you just have to cremate people who you love and they die without you seeing them. Perhaps that's the motivation that people need, and that is really a daunting task to even think about. But I think that's really where we're getting to unless more people decide to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. And I live in New York City, and I definitely don't want a repeat of 2020. I distinctly recall hearing sirens like all the time because I'm very close to a hospital. I'm very close to a firehouse. And I would really just encourage everybody listening. We do not want to keep burying more people. We do not want to be burying children. We don't want to say, wow, we coulda, woulda, shoulda when it's too late. We have the opportunity now, and we really need to take it.
Thank you. Here's another myth that we hear. Do any of the COVID-19 vaccines authorized for use in the United States shed or release their components?
Yeah, no, I have not heard that or seen that at all, and I've reviewed quite a bit of the literature, and I have not seen that.
What about the notion that there are receptors in the vaccine that are put in people, and at some point the government will turn those on, and individuals will be turned into zombies or something else?
Okay, so stay off social media. So that is not going to happen. And it's interesting. I've heard something along the lines of that as well. But people have cell phones. Facebook, I think, is always spying on me. Every time I go there, I get a new ad. So there are many, many things in the world that I'm much more concerned about than these things that you are saying. But I'm not concerned about that. I'm really concerned about people staying alive and staying out of the hospital, and the vaccines are a way to do that.
Well, what about the COVID vaccine components of it changing your immune system so that you become dependent on vaccines and other components?
Vaccine dependency is an oxymoron. One would hope that you would live long enough to need additional protection. Look, these are microparticles. These are things that are so small that you can't see, you can't taste, and you can't smell, yet lethal enough to kill you. And the change, it's not a change, it's a protection. It allows our own defense mechanisms to be able to see what is otherwise unrecognizable and have a chance to fight it. And so it literally is giving a very minute exposure to the binding protein that the virus needs to gain access into the body so that the body has a chance to mount an immune response and fight it. That's exactly what we want to do. That's exactly what it's designed to do. It's doing so in a very, very safe manner. And again, the patients who we're seeing in the hospital today, unfortunately, are not vaccinated. And those who are vaccinated, even if they get it, are not sick enough to come into the hospital.
So when you talk about putting minute particles, people I've heard say that you are putting the virus in people in the vaccine. Is that true?
There's no live virus in any of the vaccines that are approved for emergency use authorization. So there's no live vaccine in Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer. There's no live vaccine in Moderna, and it's impossible for you to get COVID-19 actually from the vaccines themselves.
What about, I've heard, some sectors, particularly individuals who are concerned, who are pro-life individuals, say that they can't take the vaccine because the vaccine has components of aborted fetuses in the vaccine.
Yeah,
that's untrue.
False.
It's just another
completely
scare
false.
Completely false.
What does it contain?
So the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine contain messenger RNA, very, very small pieces of protein that allow the body to see it and be able to fight the binding of the virus when breathed in. The Johnson & Johnson is an adenoviral vector. It's a different type of virus that allows the body, again, to be exposed to something, to be primed for a response. And there's no way that you can actually manifest the disease from these, either the messenger RNA or the adenoviral components of any of these three viruses.
Okay. Well, those were the majority of, I had my staff go out, scour, try and find the
They did a good job.
questions, the issues. Do you like? They were good, right?
Perfect.
All right, Team Plaskett. Yeah. But I wanted to let you guys kind of have the last word. At the end of this, we're going to give a list of COVID vaccination locations in the Virgin Islands, and that can be found by visiting covid19usvi.com/vaccines. And you can book an appointment by calling 340-777-8227. 340-777-8237 if you are interested in booking. I'm sorry, 340-777-8227 if you want to make an appointment, and you can find out locations for the vaccination by visiting covid19usvi.com/vaccines. Also, so I'm going to let you guys give the last word. Dr. Simmons, we're going to let ladies go first, and to my soror, Dr. Langford, you go first. If you have any closing words for us.
So thank you for having me. And I just want to say I'm very hopeful of our future. I think many people have been hesitant but on the fence. But I think forums like this give people information and more confidence to go out and get vaccinated. So I'm very hopeful, and I really hope that you all seriously consider getting vaccinated as soon as possible. And my last thought is to be very mindful of what you are sharing on social media and other places. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And if you don't know who it's coming from or where it's coming from, or you haven't read it, or it doesn't come from a reputable place like your congresswoman or the CDC.gov or MedlinePlus.gov, do not share it. We really need to protect each other from bad information. So if you can't verify it, and if you haven't read it, and it doesn't come from a healthcare professional or a public health professional, don't share it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, I just am reminded, and I've told people that I think it's also really scary that in the United States, we have an onslaught of bots and other countries sending misinformation. Russians, the Chinese, that are directing misinformation, particularly to the Black community and to people of color, for them not to get vaccinated. That should tell us something about the importance of vaccines, that the Russians are directing us as a people not to be vaccinated during this time. And I usually close out myself, but I'm going to let this doctor, who I'm going to reveal, is not just anybody to me. This is Dr. Albert Simmons. He's from St. Croix, but he is also my cousin. His mom and my dad are brothers and sisters, and our family is so enormously proud of him and the work that he's doing. We're so happy and love you so much, cuz, for all of the work that you and your wife do. The fact that if there's ever a crisis, medical support that's needed back home in the Virgin Islands, you make a point to come. You've been to Haiti when our Haitian brothers and sisters need it. You're all over, and we love you for that. And if you could just close out with a message to your fellow Virgin Islanders.
Absolutely. So one, it's always a privilege to talk to the people home. And, I am a native son, and I wouldn't want you to experience what I experience and what our teams experience here every day because of COVID. If you love your family, please stop the disinformation, make the right choice, the responsible choice. Healthcare systems are stretched right now because of people who are making bad decisions. And we trained for many, many years to be able to take care of people when they're at their most vulnerable. And because of this disinformation campaign, that trust has been eroded and people are dying because of it. So please, make the right choice. Go and get vaccinated. It's the right thing to do to save your life. It's the best decision you can make, and do so before it's too late.
So thank you. At the beginning of the show, I told you that I was going to have people who were experts in this area. I'm not an expert in this area. Neither are many of us who are sharing information on social media. I thought it was important to let the medical experts speak to us, and experts who have communities like ours in mind, from Dr. Nunez Smith, who has reached the pinnacle of her career, who is a graduate of All Saints High School on St. Thomas, and now sits and heads up the President's task force on this issue, to Dr. Aisha Langford, who cares so much about Black people in our community that she raised her hand as a scientist to be involved in the clinical trials of the vaccine to find a way out for us, and Dr. Alric Simmons, who was born right here on the island of St. Croix, has done the research, done the work to not only be an expert in his field, but to be heading up a medical healthcare system in Florida, in what is now the epicenter, as he said, the war zone against the vaccine. Taking a vaccine is not just an individual choice, an individual decision. This is about our community. We are protecting not just ourselves, but we're trying to reach herd immunity so that we can protect everyone, so that we can't just seem shocked and sad and upset when we hear about our favorite artist, our favorite promoter, a good guy that we knew, a good woman, someone who's young, who is now in the hospital, individuals who die, and even those individuals who come out and continue to have lingering illness. This is going to continue in our home until we reach herd immunity. So no, I don't believe it's a personal decision. It is my business if you're vaccinated. It is all of our business until we reach herd immunity and are able to protect these Virgin Islands so that we can move on to prosperity. Thank you all. Stay VI strong and have a great day.